Thank you for joining me. This is Zach with Zach OS Tech, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this habit tracking application that you can use to accomplish your goals in 2021. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is open up your favorite code editor. Here, I'm going to use VS Code. That's my editor of choice. And there's a couple extensions that I'm going to show you that I'm going to use, and it'll help your environment look the same as mine. So if you click on this extensions icon and type in JavaScript ES6, we're going to click on this one with the yellow icon and hit install. I would search for live server, and we're going to download the one by Ritwick Day. This will allow us to serve up a website, and it'll show us our changes real time as we're making them. The last one I would recommend is Prettier. And it's a code formatter so that it'll help format your code in the same way that mine is formatting mine. If you don't have VS Code, you can go to Chrome or your favorite browser, go to code.visualstudio.com, and then hit the download for Windows. If you're using a Mac, it should detect it, but if it doesn't, hit the drop down here, Mac OS, do the stable version instead of the insiders. The next thing you'll need is a GitHub account, and that'll just allow you to track your progress on this, and it'll allow you to download this repository and make the changes and code along with me. So just go to github.com and hit sign up, and then you'll need to go to the repository for this. So the link for that will be in the description, github.com/ZachHoskins/52projects. And then you'll click this code, and you'll want to copy this link. Okay, that's all we're going to do right now in Chrome. So we'll minimize that. So you notice that my terminal at the bottom here was already open. If you want to toggle that, you can do Control and the accent button or the tilde. On Mac, it's Command and tilde, I believe. And if you have Git installed on your computer, that's another one that you may need to download. So I just Googled Git download, and it was the first link here. And it has a download for Mac and Windows. So I would do download 2.3 for Windows, and then I would install it. You may need to restart your computer or your code editor, so you would have to restart VS Code. But then after that, if you type in git -- version, it'll tell you what version of Git you have installed on your computer. If you cannot get it to work at all, what you can do is go to this code dropdown and download zip, and that'll allow you to download the zip folder, and you would extract it and then be able to edit the files inside it. So once you have Git installed on your computer and it's showing a version in here, you're going to want to navigate to where your folder is going to be for these projects. So I want mine to be in my developer folder. So I'm going to CD, and CD stands for change directory. So I'm going to go to the root of my C drive and then CD dev. And this is where I'm going to store all of these projects. So now I can do git clone and then type in that link that GitHub gave me. Hit enter, and now I should be able to change directory into 52 projects. So if we then type in code and then 01 tab is a way to autofill the next thing that is recognized with the start of what you typed. So we're going to open Habit Tracker, and it opens in a new window here, a new VS Code window. So we have app.js, we have index.html, and we have style.css. So I have already included the HTML and the CSS needed for this project. We're just going to focus on the app.js file. If we want to look at the HTML real quick, it's got a habits header, it's got a form, and this unordered list with the class name of habits. This is where all of the habits that we're going to add are going to get stored and listed. And then, of course, we are referencing the script, so the app.js folder for the JavaScript. And then up here, we have a link to the CSS file. Let's look at what this looks like right now. So if you followed along with me and installed Live Server, you should have this Go Live button in the bottom right. Go ahead and click on that. And it should open in your browser with localhost and then 5500 as the link. We have habits. We have this place to enter your habit name that you want to track. Number of repetitions. So you could either click the number that way or you can type in your own number. It has the frequency. So if you want to do it these many times daily, weekly, monthly, or per year, you can track it like that. And then we have an add habit button, which is just a submit form element. This says loading because what we did is in the HTML here, the habits list has a list item of loading. So that's going to stay there forever until we add the JavaScript to remove that. So let's close this HTML file and open the app.js instead. So we're going to start with const add habits equals document. And what we're doing here is we're referencing the DOM, the document object model. And this is the document where we're going to add everything to. So this is, if we look at console log document. Okay. This is literally the entire page that gets rendered. Let's clear that. We might be going back there later. Okay, so document, and then we're going to use a query selector. And if we look at this add habits button, if we inspect it, we want this add habit form. That's what we're getting right now. So I'll copy it from there, add habit. But since it's a class, we need to first put a period in front of it. And then to end the line, a semicolon. Okay. So now we can do console log add habits. And so that returns that form element that's on the page. We're going to need const habits equals, we'll set it to an empty array right now. And then what we can do is we can loop through this habits and list them all in this section down here. And then we will also need to reference this section so that we know where to add those habits to once we have the array built. So I'm going to add it here. Const, let's do habits list equals document dot query selector. And then what was that called in here? You could also look at the index.html. Might be easier. So we have the form add habits, and then it's just a class name of habits. So we're going to do quotation marks dot habits. Let's comment some of the functionality that we want in this habit tracking application. So the first thing is to add a habit. Okay. Then let's list habit. We want to be able to check them off. Toggle if complete. Toggle if complete. Let's do delete habit. Okay, so this will allow us to add a habit there. It'll show up. It'll get listed. Then we can toggle it on and off. And if we mistype something or it's a habit that we don't want anymore, we will be able to delete it from this list. Let's start there because we can always add things if we need to down the road. So let's do a function add habit. All right. And what I'm going to do is E. So add habit event. It's going to capture an event when this is run. What do we want in our habit? The first thing is text. So const text equals this dot query selector name equals habit. Okay, so it looks a little funky. Dot value. And then let's console log text. Okay, but we can't run this yet. It's not going to do anything. So let's see that. Okay, boom, 2 weekly, and add habit. It did nothing because the HTML has no way to know that we actually ran this. There's nothing listening for something to change to run this function. So what we can do at the bottom is we can add an event listener on the add habits. So let's do add habits dot add event listener. And then we're going to listen for a submit. So instead of just listening for a click or something like that, we're going to wait for it to be an actual submit so that it's not like you click and drag off and it fires, even though you didn't mean to actually run that function yet. So submit, and then what's the function that we want to run? Add habit. Okay, we don't need to pass anything into it right now because this is just the event that fires the function. Okay, so we should be able to fire this now. Okay, so it's still refreshing on us, which means that it probably console logged and then it refreshed. So we lost that console log. We can stop this. We can prevent it from happening by doing e.prevent default. What e.prevent default will allow us to do is just keep this submit button from refreshing the entire page on us again. So let's save it with prevent default on here, and then we'll log this. Okay. So the text listened for name equals habit. So up here, we were able to do dot add habit. So why couldn't we just do dot habit down here? Let's look at the index.html to find out. So it did a query for name equals text, right? Name equals habit. My bad. So name equals habit. This is what it was listening for, which is the form, and it's the first input on the form. Or we could look here. Okay, so for name habit, this is the one. Okay, so what's this next one? Name reps. So let's go back to app.js. I'm going to comment out this console log, and we're going to do the same thing for reps. So const, let's name it total counts equals this dot query selector again. Okay, it's still a name, so we're going to do name equals reps dot value. Okay, what else is on here? The frequency. So what's the name of that? We actually wrap this in a div because there's the label and then there's the select. So we want the select. Okay, so let's do const time frame equals this dot query selector name equals time frame. Okay. Dot value. And then what we want to do so that we can render a new habit is we want to add what we collected to the habits array that we created up here. So let's do const habit, not habits. So we're just storing this data in an object. So let's do text is equal to, and this is in a key value pair. So this is the key, and this is what the value is going to be. So we want it to be what text equals. Okay, and then we'll do comma. We'll do reps. Nope. We will do total counts is the key. Let's link it to total counts. Okay. Then time frame. Same thing. Let's link this to time frame. Oops. This is why I copy and paste. Boom, boom. Okay. And then completed. False. So why do we do completed false? Because if we didn't have a completed Boolean, then there would be no way for us to know if the task was actually completed or not. It would just forever stay uncompleted. And even if you check it, it won't change. So we're going to add completed false. And then what we can do with this is go down here and do habits.push, which is a built-in function on arrays that we can use to add content to an array. So we're going to push this onto the habits array, and we want it to be habit. Okay, so let's go ahead and console log habit and see what happens here. So test rest, that's actually a good thing. So let's rest once daily, add a habit. Okay. So this returned an object where completed is false, the text is rest, time frame is daily, and total counts is 1. So now we want it to actually show up down here. So to do that, we're going to need a new function. So let's go below list habits, and we're going to name this function list habits equals an empty array, and then we're going to do habits list. Okay. Why does it matter if we pass in this empty array right here? It's because if we didn't and we just said habit, if the page tries to render habit and it doesn't know what it is, it'll give us an error. So to prevent that from happening, we can initialize it with an empty array. Okay, and then let's do habits list dot inner HTML. Okay, so habits list dot inner HTML. What this does is it is going to write to the HTML. So it's going to write to the DOM and allow us to put in a value here. So we'll do habits dot, we're going to call the map function, which is, or the map method, which is built into all arrays. And then we're going to pass in habit and an index. And we'll get into that in a bit, why we're doing that. And this will be an arrow function, which is, it comes with the updates in ES6 to JavaScript. So that'll allow us to run a function here. And it'll run that function on every value inside the array and return a new array. That's what map will do. So we're going to return and then use these backticks to return some HTML. And I'm actually going to jump over to here just so that we can use the code formatting that comes with the HTML files. Let's do a list item. Instead of this list item, what do we want? We want there to be a checkbox. We want the title. We want there to be a numerical value counting up so we can see when we reach the number so that it's complete. We want a delete button. I think that's it. So we'll start with the input. And it'll be of type checkbox. We will do data equals, or data dot dash index equals, and we'll pass in that index value that we have. Okay, we'll make the ID here of habit I. So we'll do habit 1, habit 2, habit 3 as we go. All right, and then the last thing we'll want to pass on to this input is a ternary operator that will allow us to determine if it's completed or not, and it'll pass in the word completed if we've actually completed it. So, or this habit. So we'll do habit dot completed question mark, and this is the syntax for a ternary operation. Checked. Otherwise, we'll do nothing. Okay? And we can close that tag. We don't need a closing tag for the input. Okay, we're going to do a label. Now we're going to put a label on this checkbox, which is going to show a text right to the right of it. So we'll do label for, and we'll do habit on the same thing, I. So when we go through this, it'll add a habit 1 to both of these, and this will link it to that habit. So inside this label, what we want is, let's list habit dot total count and habit dot time frame. So that'll give us the number that we put in here. That'll say 3 daily or 4 weekly. But it won't let us actually know how many times we clicked on it. So what we actually have to do is add another value into this habit array. Let's name it reps. And we will just initialize it at 0 for each one that we go through. And we don't need to link it to anything because each time you start a habit, it's going to be at 0, and then we'll count up from there. And what we can do with that is once reps equals the total count that we put in here, then we can mark it as complete. So let's actually add that reps right before habit total count. So habit.reps, and then we'll do a slash. So it'll say 0 out of 3, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, and it'll check it off. Okay. So we got the time frame, and then what we want to do is then add the text to this. So I'm going to use a span to do this. I'm actually going to here, line break so that you can see. That did not work. Okay, I'll just scroll over. And then in here, we're going to do habit.text. Save. Whoa, that is not what we want. Oh, that's because we... Yeah, let's undo that. It's because we added this list item actually to the bottom of the HTML code. Let's now go back to this and paste it in between these back ticks, because it'll allow us to input text, but also reference, it'll also allow us to run JavaScript by doing $ and then curly braces. So it'll allow us to link to this index that we're passing in and to the habit array. So let's save that. Let's go here, number of repetitions, weekly. Okay, nothing changed. Why is that? What if we went to the console and did list habits? Cannot set property inner HTML of undefined. Okay, and it's pointing us to line 26, which is here. So it's saying habits list is undefined. Okay. So habits list is pointed to habits, which is this unordered list. So that should... Oh, I think it's because I didn't pass in any... Let's do this again. And then habits list. Okay, perfect. So that added 0, undefined, weekly, and ASDF. For whatever reason, ASDF is there, but we'll figure that out in a bit. Okay, again, we have to run this. Undefined, let's just do sure. And then we have to run list habits. So instead of running list habits each time, we can add it here at the end of the file. So list habits, habits, and then habits list. So it's taking in that array and pushing it to the habits list section of the HTML. Let's save, and let's see what happens here. Boom. Okay. Okay. I see what it's doing. So it is, this is the text that, okay. How about I actually put something in besides ASDF? Let's do read 1 time per day. Add habit. I think I added it twice because we're not clearing this. Okay. So at least it checks it off properly when we're clicking on it. Okay, but there's no logic there. And it's giving us an undefined here. So let's look into that. Why is it not listing the number that we put in here as the number that gets listed? Okay, just giving us undefined. So let's do console log habits. By doing console log habits, we can see this array. Okay. So we have our reps that should be at 0. That's proper. Total counts. Okay, 2. It's not listing it there for some reason. Total count. Total count. We had a typo. Let's do that. Boom. We're going to do ASDF twice daily. Okay. And then we're going to exercise 3 times a week. Okay, let's run list habits. Okay. 0 out of 2 daily, 0 out of 3 weekly. We're getting there. Okay. Except I don't like the way that this text is formatted. Like this is really big and this is really small. So the way that the span is formatted in the CSS is it makes the span smaller and the regular label text bigger. So let's move this span from being on the text to being on this part, this label. So we'll put it inside the label span. Okay. And then we will put it right before the text starts. Boom. Read once daily. Okay, that looks way better. Although it's annoying to have to run list habits every time that we type something in. And it also doesn't clear when we have read or we have one, so we'll take care of that as well. So the first thing we can do is after this add habit, so we push it to the array, and then let's run the list habits function. Habits list is where we want to put it. Save. It's going to clear that. Exercise 2 times a week. Add habit. Boom. So now it's showing up. Cool. But it still shows up in here, so I can't quickly add a bunch of habits. So what we want to do is, after we list the habits, we're going to do something called reset. And so we're going to run the reset function, which is, some forms have a button that specifically says reset, and then another button that says submit. We're going to add the reset at the end of this to just run once the function is done. So this dot reset, that's it. So now if we do blah, add, and it resets all of the fields in this form. Cool. So now this doesn't ever count up. So that might be the next thing that we want to do. So that could be in the toggle if complete section. We're just toggling it like it's a checkbox, which makes sense because we made it a checkbox. So if we look at let's go down here. Okay. Let's do another one. And I keep putting this in because in the index.html, I made both of these required. So you can't add just a blank habit. It'll tell you, please fill out this form field. Okay, so we fill out that form field, add, and it doesn't allow you to do this. Also, we added a minimum of 1 to this. So if you do 0 and try to say I want to do this 0 times daily, it gives you an error because you can't do things more than or less than 0 times, and it would actually break this down here and not let us toggle it completed or count up. All right. Why is it adding that apostrophe? Okay. So what this is doing is it's basically making an array of these. Like if we do another value of, let's do 3 so it's different, it's going to add the comma and then the next value. So what we can do instead is to join all these together by doing dot join, and then we are going to not put anything in between the values. Okay, so if we run that and then do boom 1 and then test 4 times daily, now it's putting them all in without the
comma in between them all. That looks way better. Okay. So I like the list habits, but we just want the toggling to work. Like if this is supposed to wait until we click it 4 times before it toggles. So I think list habits is done. We can get rid of that comment. Add habits is done because we're able to add. Let's do, okay. So when we click this, let's do another function. Toggle completed. We'll pass in the event to it. And let's console log E. Okay. Oh, we didn't add an event listener. Okay. So what's this button called? No, we're clicking down here. Okay. This is the habits list. So we'll do habits list dot add event listener the same way we did before, but this time we'll listen for a click because there's no submit form field down here, and we will run toggle completed. Okay. Eventually, we want to add a delete button over here. So what's going to distinguish if we clicked on this or if we clicked on delete? That's what we need to add right now. Otherwise, we would hit delete and it would just check it off instead of deleting the whole item. Because, let's clear this so we get a little bit better idea. So we're listening for the click event on this whole habits list. So that won't work. Okay. So what's this? This is label. Okay. Let's do e dot target. Because E gives us everything. E got target will actually list what we clicked on. Okay, so a label and then a checkbox. So actually in the CSS we hid the checkbox so that we can add this plus here. Otherwise it would show as, okay, we have display none. So if we comment that out, it would show like that. And if we're doing this little cross out type of thing, then we don't need the checkbox to show that it's completed. So it just makes it look a little nicer to have that display as none. But it still thinks that we're clicking on the checkbox, which allows us to toggle it. And if we used like a screen reader, you would still be able to see that that was checked and we're not messing with the accessibility of this application. Let's close styles for now. So what we want to do with this e.target is we want to make sure that we are clicking on the checkbox here. Okay. So let us do if and we can run e.target, which returns these two values and matches and pass in what we want it to match. So input, because the checkbox is the input one. So if it doesn't match input, then just return. Don't do anything. Okay, but if it does equal input, what we want to do is make this L element here. make a constant, and then we can do const index equals L dot dataset, which is why we did the dataset dot input. No, index. Okay, so this is going to get the ID that we're passing in, the index that we're passing into this. Okay, so let's do index now instead of, okay, let's do like 3 habits on here. Okay, let's eat not 4 times daily, let's eat 3 times daily. Okay, boom. 1, and this should be 0. So it's passing us the index of what we're clicking on. And with that, we can use the array to increase this value and also check it off if it is actually completed instead of just immediately checking it off. So let's get rid of this console.index. We don't need that anymore. If habit index, because we have this data set value that will return the number now, dot reps, and we're going to do a triple equal sign. So we always want to do a triple equal sign because it'll make sure that the type as well as the number is the same. If you just do a double equal sign, it'll try to convert them to the same type. And if you have a string and a number, it'll still equal, but it could mess things up with how it decides to convert it. So we'll do a triple equals, habits, index, and we're going to compare it to the total count. Right? No, we threw in an extra. Okay, so if it equals each other, we want to do habits index dot completed and set that equal to true. Okay, so let's give that a test. So what's happening here? So there's still nothing here that increments this value, the reps. So it's always going to just stay on 0. So what we want to do is each time we run this toggle completed, we want to add habits index dot reps. And we're going to do plus equals 1. So this is JavaScript shorthand for typing equals habits index dot reps plus 1. So we can shorten that all into this plus equals 1, and it'll do the incrementing for us. So now if we try this, it still doesn't display anything. And that's because we are changing the reps here. So now it's 13. We completed it 13 times, but we don't ever change what we rendered to the page. So we actually have to go in here and add the list habits function one more time at the end and still do habits and habits list. So now we'll just keep incrementing. And it did not check off once it hit 1. Okay, so let's do another one. Test. Let's do it 2. So it should check it off at that point. So what's going on? It obviously doesn't think that this 2 is equal to this 2 for some reason. Okay, so let's Let's do console.table. It's another thing that you can do with console, and pass in habits. All right, so it's got the reps equal to 2 and the total count equal to 2 in quotation marks. So for some reason it's converting that to a string up here. So it's taking this number that we type in and converting it into a string before it saves it into this constant. So one thing we could do is add a plus before here, and that'll force it to make it a number. So now if we did boom, okay, now it doesn't have the quotation marks. Now they're both numbers. So now this equality function with the triple equals will actually work, and it'll check it off. Awesome. So what if we keep clicking it? It just continues to go up and up forever and ever. So that's not very helpful for us. So what we can do is add another else if, and then we could have it go back to 0 so that we can start it over. So if we had a daily thing that we wanted to do, we could check off it's done on Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning we could click it again and have it reset to 0. And that way we don't have to delete and then re-add it. So let's do that right here. Let's do habits index dot reps is greater than the habits, the total counts. We're going to set the habits.index.reps equal to 0. Okay. So this isn't going to work. It's because it'll check it off and then it'll set it back to 0, but it won't ever change the fact that this completed Boolean is set to true. So then we'll do habits index dot completed equals false. Now, if we do this, boom, it goes back to 0, and we can do it again. Perfect. That is exactly what we were wanting for this, and that'll allow us to continue to use these over and over again each day. But how can we use these each day if when we refresh the page it deletes it? We can use a thing called local storage, and we can store it to like a key value pair inside the browser. So it'll save it if you use the same browser over and over again. So to do that, we need to, after we push the habits, we want to do local storage dot set item, and then we're going to pass in habits, and the value will be, we can't just pass habits because that is an array of objects. So local storage can only store strings. So we'll have to convert habits to a string so that we can save it in the browser. And to do that, we will use something called json.stringify and then pass in habits. Okay, so now when we do this, hit add habits, we can go to application, and here it is. Here is the habits with this value that we added to it. So if we refresh, it's still going to delete it, but it's going to remember that there is a habit key value pair that we saved in local storage. Okay, I'm going to clear that for right now. But one thing we can do here at the top, okay, now it's in there. We can either do json.parse, which is another method on JSON, which allows us to convert from a string to a JSON object that would allow us to make habits an actual array of objects. So we'll do JSON parse, and we want to do local storage where we stored it before, but this time we'll use get item, and it's habits. Okay. Do we want to delete this? Okay, so if we did it this way, now it'll remember. Awesome. And it'll update that properly. But what happens if we clear this and then try to run it? Now we're just stuck at this loading, and it'll say loading forever until we actually add something. And now we can't push because we have a value of null that we're trying to add to. So what we can do to avoid this is do or just like that. So what this will do is it'll look first at local storage, and if there is an item under the name of habits, it'll create the habits array using that. Otherwise, it'll just make an empty array. So now it'll allow us to add things. It'll allow us to refresh. If we clear that, okay, we're still not getting an error message now. Perfect. But if you noticed, I can check this off and refresh, and it goes back to 0. So we're not actually updating the local storage after we change things. So if we went down to toggle complete, we're re-rendering all of the habits using this, but we are not saving it to local storage. So we could actually just copy and paste this local storage line here. And now if we check it off, refresh, now it's going to stay, no matter how many times we refresh the page. Okay. We're starting to get there. I think we're almost complete. We just don't have a way to delete this without clearing the local storage, which doesn't help because it will delete everything that you have from your habit tracker. So let's go back to here and add a button. All right. Class equals delete. We're going to use the data index again and set it equal to I. So it'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or start with 0 actually. We're going to set the ID to delete I. And for simplicity's sake, we're just going to put the word delete at the end of each item. So let's see what happens. Did we not save? What in the world? All right, we broke something because now it's button, list item. I don't think the tabbing matters in this. Aha. So we needed to do quotation marks on this. We left it unclosed. Okay, and you see that it updated this. However, this might be broken, so we're gonna clear that and then restart. So 1 times test, 2 times weekly. Okay, but now delete doesn't actually do anything. It'll still allow us to check it off, but when we hit the delete button, nothing happens. That's because we need to add another event listener for the delete button. So instead of adding it to the delete button, we're going to do the same thing as this. We're going to listen for a click on habits list, which is this entire thing, and then decide if we clicked on delete in that list. So habits list dot add event listener, another click, and this time we're going to run delete habit, which is a function that we have not created yet. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And we do want to pass in an E here. Okay, so we now have this delete habits function created, but we have nothing in it right now. We're going to do the same thing that we did with toggle completed. We're going to check for, but instead of input, we're going to check for the delete button. So let's just copy that. And what does this button show up as? Button. It's a button. So we will search for button. Okay. So if it doesn't equal a button, then it'll just return. Otherwise, we can do the same thing that we did here. So we capture the index of it, and then all this is going to do is return the index of the button we clicked. So another thing we can do with arrays is pass in the name.splice, and then this will ask for an index and how many numbers we want to cut out of the array. So we'll do the starting number, which should be index, and we want to cut one number out of that. Okay, so let's make sure that we run list habits and local storage after, so that it updates everything. Okay, and that worked. And that worked too. Okay, so let's do add habit. Okay, it still won't let us do that. Let's actually put real content in here. So read once daily. Okay, let's do exercise 3 times a week. Let's do post video once weekly. All right, delete. So this still works. It still checks off. Delete. Let's look at when we refresh, it's still, so it's updating the local storage as well. Okay, it updates the value, refresh, and it's saving everything. So all right, so I think we're there. So this has 3 of the 4 things needed for a CRUD application. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. So this will allow us to create things, read it, because it lists everything here, and delete. So we just can't update the name of this. So that's a challenge. You could try to implement that yourself. You can add another button here on the left that says edit, and then it'll allow you to change the value of the text. Other than that, we can make sure we save our JavaScript, and if we go back to the terminal, if we do git status, it'll show us that we're on branch main, we're up to date with main, but we have not committed the changes that we made to app.js. So if we want to push this up to GitHub so that we can keep track of all the progress that we've made, then you can do git add, and that'll add everything. So git status to check what's, so green means that it's staged to be ready to commit. And then once you're ready to commit things, let's do git commit M for message, and then finished week 1. Okay, now our branch is up to date, and we can do git push. And if you hit enter, then it will push this up to your copy of the 52 projects on GitHub. So I think that about does it for us here today. Shoot me a comment if you're able to do this with your version of this application, because I'd love to see it. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos for Remake, I would love to hear that as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.